This conference will now be recorded.
So we're ready when you are, Dick. Looks like we lost our chair. He was there. Why don't we give him a minute to probably reconnect, and then we can start.
Hey, Brad,
Yeah,
a question for you on
sure.
the MJTC representative.
Yep.
Does that need to be a resident of the town?
We didn't put any restrictions on that. Just like you don't have to
Okay.
be a member of the planning board or the select board, but just someone that the boards are comfortable with.
All right, so it could be an employee that's not a resident or,
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. As long as the town's satisfied, we're satisfied.
okay.
I don't see our chair logging back in. So why don't we start anyway? I will try and run the meeting, and we'll go from there. And if the chairman is able to get back in, we'll turn it back over to him. So this is the Montachusett Joint Transportation Committee meeting for Wednesday, June 14th, a regularly scheduled meeting of the JTC. I won't do introductions. We'll get the names off of the chat list or the participant list for the minutes, but we'll not do any formal introductions at this point. So we'll move on to item 2, public comments. Are there any comments from anyone attending the meeting they'd like to say before we begin? Just either raise your hand or make a notice, wave on the screen. I do not see any. So with that, then we'll move on to item number 3, which is approval of the May 10th, 2023 MJTC minutes. Copies should have gone out with you. You should have received them with the mailing for this meeting. And we do this by consensus. So if there's a agreement, we'll take it by consensus. But first, are there any questions or comments or corrections that need to be made on these minutes? Seeing and hearing none, I'll ask if the JTC is comfortable with accepting the minutes as presented. If anyone is objecting, please just say objection or raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll consider them approved.
Approved.
Okay. And see no other motions. We'll assume that the minutes of May 10th, 2023 are approved as presented by consensus. Moving on to agenda item number 4, the Montachusett Regional Transportation Plan, RTP. I'll introduce this topic right now. As you are aware, over the last several months, we've been talking about the new Regional Transportation Plan, the 2024 RTP, which we are calling Journey to 2050. Staff has been working on this plan for a year, basically, getting different chapters and different sections put together for presentation. We've discussed over the past few months the goals and strategies, the planning scenarios part of it. We also talked about the financials at the last month's meeting. And there are several other chapters of the document that have been prepared, that will be incorporated. And once the draft is ready for public review and comment, it's going to be posted to our website, which can at mrpc.org. There'll be a banner on the front page of the website where you can click to see the RTP and the draft chapters. We anticipate that draft will go up next Wednesday, 1 week before the upcoming June MPO meeting. And then we'll begin a public review and comment period, 21-day comment period, sometime after the June 28th MPO meeting. We anticipate that that'll run till about mid to late July. We're going to use the next MJTC meeting in July as an opportunity for public comment on the RTP as it stands. We're going to go through 4 different chapters of the RTP and just talk about some of the recommendations that have been put together and what is included in it. And then we'll go on and talk about the population projection information that was just given to us by Mass DOT. And then we'll be looking for a recommendation by the JTC to the MPO on whether or not the document should be released for public comment. So we'll begin the presentation of the different chapters with safety, and George Snow will have that information. So George, if you can.
Thank you, Brad. For safety chapter, we basically have 3 sections. I'll be discussing 3 sections: safety trends, safety recommendations, and safety action items. For safety trends, based on a 5-year rolling average, road rate fatalities have trended upward, which is a negative trend, since the 2008-2012 5-year period when 14 fatalities occurred. For each 5-year period since the 2008-2012 5-year period, 15 to 16 fatalities have occurred for each 5-year period since then. Also, based on a 5-year rolling average, serious injuries have trended downward, which is a positive trend, since the 2008-2012 5-year period. SUP recently completed the 2023 Strategic Highway Safety Plan, or SHSP, and we will be working with Mass DOT in our member communities to implement the new SHSP that seeks to improve roadway safety on all public roads in the state. To further plan to improve safety in our region, we were awarded a federal Safe Streets and Roads Action Plan grant to develop a safety action plan for our region. For safety recommendations, there are 106 intersections in the region's top high crash intersections table and 160 road segments in the region's top at-risk road segments table that need safety improvement projects. So those are a list of recommendations that we have that need safety improvements. For safety action items, the primary action item to improve safety at the locations mentioned above, or any combination thereof, safety improvements projects need to be considered for development based on the strategies and actions found in the SHSP. And even when we do the action plan, the safety action plan, we will be incorporating actions and strategies from the SHSP. And that's about all I have for the safety chapter.
Thank you, George. One thing I want to point out is George mentioned some of the locations with by name. Not all locations we're not going to identify particular locations in every chapter, but there will be general concepts such as improving intersection safety, improving roadway safety. And those general concepts are included in the RTP, and it's important that they be in there so that projects can then be move on to the TIP process and become actual projects for construction and implementation. The general process is identified in the RTP. Community then initiates a TIP project, goes to the TIP, and eventually out for construction. The next section that we're going to talk about is on bicycle and pedestrians, and that will be Sherry.
All right, so following very similarly to the safety information, we're going to do the trends and recommendations and action items as well. So for the bike and pedestrian chapter, we noticed that in general, the region has increased, the desire for multimodal transportation options has increased significantly over the past couple of years. Actually, probably more than that. It's growing each year, and as is the support and funding options to go along with that. Programs such as Complete Streets and Safe Routes to School are gaining support from our member communities. In fact, 19 out of the 22 communities have approved policies, and then one other additional community is registered. So that only leaves 2 communities who don't have any involvement with Complete Streets out of all 22, which is pretty impressive for a small region such as ours. And then for Safe Routes to School, 18 out of the 22 MRPC communities are partners with the program, which is also great because both of those have funding ties as well as support for alternate modes of transportation. The state's also contributing financially to the trail projects through Mass Trails Grant Program. Just last year, there were 7 MRPC communities that received funding through this program. And then another notable funding source is the CMAQ, or Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement Program, as well as the TAP program, which is the Transportation Alternatives Program. So there's lots of funding opportunities and options to go for more trail projects or to further along a trail or bikeway project. For the bike and ped recommendations, funding is also a major component. So increasing existing funding programs and available dollar amounts are always crucial to furthering these regional significant projects, but additionally, continuing to study and plan on trail-related developments in order to identify priority trails and trail connections are also key for alternate modes of transportation. For some action items that we have, we want to continue to encourage and support all communities to participate in the Complete Streets and Safe Routes to School programs, as well as take advantage of funding programs such as Mass Trails and CMAQ for their trail projects. And that's all I have for that.
Okay, any questions for Sherry? Or I forgot to mention for George before we move on? No? Okay. I will hand the next one chapter over to Brian on infrastructure. Brian?
Okay, so here's the RTP draft chapter on infrastructure, and by infrastructure, what we mean is basically roads and bridges. And we took the same general approach as some of the other topics we discussed. We tried to develop some trends in the region. Basically, there are 326 bridges in the region. We monitor these conditions. We've been doing it for several years. And one of the measures we pay special attention to is the number of structurally deficient bridges in the region. And these are bridges that not necessarily are unsafe, but basically they should be monitored and possibly repaired. So it's important to keep our thumb on where the trends are, if the number of these structurally deficient bridges are increasing or decreasing or what have you. So it looks back a little bit in time. As I mentioned, we've been monitoring conditions for several years. Back in 2008, actually, it was determined that we're going in the wrong direction statewide with the number of these structurally deficient bridges. They were increasing overall. So the state initiated what's called the Accelerated Bridge Program, basically, which invested more money into getting back on the right track. So what you can see in this table at the top of the screen here, structurally deficient bridges region-wide in the Montachusett region. Back in 2006, that was 52. There were 52 of these bridges in the region. After the development of the 2008 program and the funding that followed, we saw a steady decline in the number of these bridges in the region. It dropped to its lowest in 2018. This is when the program actually ended. We had 32 such bridges in the region. Since then, we've sort of plateaued at 35 over the last several years. So the trend that we determined was basically where we plateaued as far as the number of structurally deficient bridges in the region. Much like bridges, we look at pavement. We have a asset management pavement program that we look at, all the federal aid eligible pavement miles in the region. We use some Mass DOT data. We also have some data in-house. We collect road pavement samples on a 4-year rotating basis on these roads. There's 667 miles of Fed aid eligible roads in the region. And basically, our main focus is to try to determine trends in the network. So we go over some of this in the RTP. We mention some reference to a performance measure that we actually set in the 2016 RTP that basically said we'd like to increase the percentage of excellent and good classified roads in the region over a certain period of time. So we look back on that and region-wide in the last 5 years since 2017, we've determined that we've actually done that. We've increased the number of the overall percentage of excellent and good classified roads in the region. So that's a positive trend that we've seen. That means that we're making the proper amount of investments. Certainly the main thing we want to do is not to backslide on these infrastructure needs. We don't want to get to a point where the number of bridges that are structurally deficient are increasing and the roadways are deteriorating. That takes a lot to dig out of a hole like that. So one of the important things is to just monitoring these conditions. And that brings us to recommendations. Basically, one of the main points, again, is to continue on with these asset management programs to determine if we're making the proper investments, and also to obviously continue to invest the appropriate amount into these maintenance projects on these assets. So that's what I have for the infrastructure chapter that will be out for public comment.
Any questions for Brian related to infrastructure? Seeing none. I did give Steve an email from Dick, our chairman, who said he's having some problems and he's on the phone. And I see we have someone identified as caller 1. Is that you, Dick?
Yes, it is.
It is. Okay. Do you want to continue? Do you want to take over now as chair?
I can. I'm in a little noisy location, so maybe you just continue and I'll listen to mute if that's better, Brad.
No problem. I'll continue that way then. The next chapter we're going to review is transit, and that is mine. Brian, if you have the, let me have share the screen. Share my screen. Okay. Window, I want to do, okay. All right, can you see that? It says transit recommendations?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, great. So putting together the transit chapter, typically we'll look back from the last RTP, which was done in 2019, and look at the service and ridership and revenue projections and statistics from the Transit Authority, MART, as the main transit body in our region, and see what kind of trends and how things are developing. However, since the last RTP, we had the COVID pandemic hit, and basically ridership on all modes of transit systems took a huge nosedive from 2020 to 2022. So in the transit chapter, I looked at previous, again, where we stood in 2019, what the figures showed during the COVID pandemic years and how they've dropped considerably. But it wouldn't be wise to do a comparison to see if there's any, trends there, because the trends are so impacted by what happened during the pandemic process. So basically, we're looking at just, what can be done and what plans for the transit authority over the next 20 or so odd years of the RTP. And we went back and looked at some of the recommendations from the last time and tried to sort of basically reiterate many of these recommendations because they're still in play and still important to both transit operator as well as the ridership people. So our recommendations focused on trying to increase mobility for Montachusett area residents that don't own cars or choose to be less dependent on personal vehicles. Recommendation number 2 is where it becomes apparent that additional services or certain services needed in March should continue to work with those institutions to examine requests and organizational involvement as ways to help to defray the costs of the additional services. This is what happened in the town of Townsend, where they talked to MART about a shuttle service from their town to the train station in Fitchburg. Continue to closely monitor special services for the elderly and disabled. Increase and improve routing and schedule, so it'll be necessary for MART to maintain and improve the operating condition of its vehicle fleet. It's also recommended that MART continue to collaborate with municipalities regarding the Council on Aging public transportation vehicles in order to allow them to be expanded for additional uses within the community. And that MART continues to increase its social media presence to help better promote services and information to the community. Over the last few years, they've done that through YouTube videos and additional input on their websites. In terms of actual projects that the Transit Authority is looking at, they gave us a listing of some of those projects that they like to implement over the coming years. And I've grouped them here sort of in together to sort of show you what they're looking at doing. The ones highlighted in green involve the system-wide transit system, from doing demographic studies on who's out there and who's riding and where they need to extend their services, to a rebranding campaign to improve their presence in the communities. They're also looking at elevator monetization at a number of locations where they have elevators. Electric vehicle charging infrastructure, improving those and getting through grant submissions, EV stations, solar canopies, battery backup systems put up where necessary at their Water Street facility and other electric and other facilities. They also want to do some fuel station upgrades region-wide and a lot of asphalt and concrete resealing and restriping around. In the Gardner facility, they have a particular project looking at the mechanic Bayside update with equipment for the facility. The Montachusett station, they're looking to, again, do some pavement and asphalt resealing and striping there. The next group that you see highlighted in sort of like a salmon color have to do with the Intermodal Transportation Center in downtown Fitchburg on Main Street. The projects include improving the roof and the concourse and stair tower, improvements to the parking garage, some structural repairs, improvements to the atrium at the Intermodal, improvements to the second floor to the existing open office, the existing open office space to improve its layout and floor plan, improved garage lighting and protection at the facility, again, asphalt and pavement restriping and resurfacing, and an ITC generator replacement that supports the entire operation at 150 Main Street. Moving on, the ones in yellow have to do with the main administrative office facility, which is at 1427R Water Street in Fitchburg. They include HVAC replacement and a hydrogen fueling station as part of the effort to get to net zero emissions for the fleet. And then you have a list in blue of projects for 840 North Main Street, which is basically across the road from the administrative offices, right at the Fitchburg-Leominster city line. They want to do some parking expansion, renovate the second floor of the office space to make it more comfortable and usable. And again, another facility generator replacement to help the old generator or replace the old generator installed in 2005. So these are the major projects and programs that the Transit Authority identified that they're looking to implement over the next few years of the RTP. They're included here in the TIP. In the RTP as required, and hopefully these projects will make their way into the TIP with available funding that MART gets from FTA and the federal government. That's all I have on the transit. Are there any questions regarding that transit issue? Seeing none, I'll move on to the next section of the RTP presentation, which has to do with population projections. So I believe I still have control of the screen. Let me go to the population projections. Now these were sent out with the meeting notices. They are projections put together by Mass DOT and the Donahue Institute at UMass. Each time we do an RTP update, the state convenes with UMass and looks at the available census data, and does a lot of modeling to try and project these population, household, and employment projections for the entire Commonwealth. Now I want to stress that these projections are used basically at this point for computer modeling on the state highway network or road network as part of the greenhouse gas analysis and the air quality conformity determination that's required for RCPs and for the transportation improvement programs. These do not have any impact on funding levels to communities. They are simply a projection of where we believe the state is headed and individual communities are headed to help them with the overall regional and statewide models. And again, these are updated and refined every 5 years now as the RTPs come back up around. They'll go through another exercise of looking at the projections and looking at influx of individuals, mortality rates, all those kind of factors, and developing these particular numbers. So what you see on the first page of this projection handout is highlighted in blue is the MRPC region. They have our 2020 population at 250,531, with a projection that the population will decline out to the year 2050. And that by that time, they're projecting a drop of about 8.5% for the region. We did see a 6% increase from 2010 to 2020, but based upon mortality rates and the aging demographics and the cohorts of the demographics and the age populations, this is how their projections are coming out right now. Down below is a projection on households. You'll see that in 2020 census, there were 96,886 households identified in the region. That's projected to increase slightly in 2030, and then by 2050, drop down slightly below the level it's at now, about a 1% decrease from the level we're at right now. Again, these are just households within the region. The next page is a breakdown by community, and I'm sure a lot of you are interested in these numbers here. But again, let me stress that these are not used for financial purposes. It simply is an estimate to help the state with their modeling features. Most of the communities are seeing a slight decrease in time between 2020 and 2050. It goes along with the entire population expected to reduce in the state. Excuse me. So you can see if your particular community listed here, for example, in Athol, the 2020 census has you at 11,945. It's estimated that by 2050, population will drop by about 1,000, 1,400 individuals. Other communities such as Fitchburg are looking at 41,946 right now, with a decrease of slightly under 2,000 individuals by 2050. one community that, see if we find one that has a growing number. Templeton right now is at 8,149. They're expected that the increase in population will put them up to 9,915 by 2050. And this all depends too on a lot of information that is submitted to the state regarding developments, housing developments, commercial developments, industrial developments throughout the state, and what that has and the impact it would have on the job market and the workforce. Which means, speaking of the next page, we get into the household projections. And again, similar to the population projections, there's a wide range of what they expect to happen, what will occur across the region and in individual communities. The next set of projections relate to employment. They broke out the employment by what they call super sector, which is a definition of the employment categories such as construction, education, and health services, financial activities, government information, and so forth. And they've broken this out by community and individual numbers for the total employment for the communities. For example, in Ashburnham, right now it's at 1,107. They're expecting by 2050 to remain relatively constant to 1,072. And that's again based upon the town, their zoning requirements, their zoning issues, and so forth, and what's being planned across the state. So again, you can see some breakdown again by each individual community, so you can assess as to how you think your community is doing. And then also, if you agree or disagree with them, you can let us know, and we will talk to the state too. We wish we had gotten these population numbers out to you a little earlier, but the state didn't release them to us until a week ago. They gave us the final numbers, so we should get out to the communities with this information. But again, I stress that this stuff is done every 5 years as part of the overall regional transportation plan updates and redevelopments. So if you think there are issues here with your community, you can talk to us. We'll make note of it, and we'll also try and be on top of it a little more come the next go round of development of these factors, these population projections. So again, these will be incorporated into the RTP as part of the overall demographic profile of the Montachusett region, and we'll make some assumptions based upon what they're producing here and showing here. But again, they're not going to impact any funding issues that you may have with the community, your community as a whole. With that, are there any questions regarding the population projections?
Yeah, Brad, I have a question. Janet Tice
Yes.
from Shirley. I noticed on your first slide, Shirley was showing some pretty hefty population growth numbers, and I wondered if you knew or could guess what that was due to, and if that was possibly having to do with the MBTA communities mandate, because we are one.
Yeah, it could. I'm not 100% sure. I have to talk to our GIS person. Would attend these, has been attending these meetings on a regular basis. They do a lot of review and breakdown of information related to the state and the aging population and age cohorts and so forth, as well as planned developments in the state as a whole. I don't have the website here.
Yeah, Brad, we also have a problem in Shirley, and that is these the 2000 and 2010 and 2020 numbers, and I'm sure the later numbers as well include the prison population, which is actually about a third of our population. So it would be nice to know whether these numbers have anything to do with a growing prison population, or whether they are in fact resident growth in residential. I guess we could look at the households, and that might help, because obviously the prisoners are not included in the household numbers.
Right. I will make note of your question and take a look. I know they're providing us with a link that to the background data and the analysis process they went through. I forgot to get that information put together for today, but we'll incorporate it on the RTP website so that you can go back and see the what went into putting these numbers together. And there may be some answers there, but we'll also take a look into it and we'll get back to you.
Do you know how soon that'll be available on the RTP website?
At the latest, it'll be next week when we have
Oh.
posted all this information.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Yep. But I'll also take a look and we'll see if we can get you an answer individually.
Great.
Brad, also on that table, I believe under Athol, it should say air instead of total.
That was my mistake. I just noticed that too today when I was going over it. Yeah, that should be air, not total. Too many graphs, too many tables to play with.
I found it interesting that the some of the towns with populations going down had households increasing. I'm wondering maybe if it's just people are having less children or they're aging enough where their children have moved out. It's just,
yeah, in the past, it's usually been a result of the aging population and people staying in their houses longer. I think that's a direct correlation as to what their projections are showing. Any other questions on the population projections? Okay, if not, would like to ask that we get consensus on a recommendation from the MJTC to the MPO. And that recommendation we're seeking is to ask them to release the draft RTP for a 21-day public review and comment period. Is there any objection to that resolution or that statement by anyone? Seeing none, I'll take that as a full consensus of the JTC, and we'll make that recommendation to the MPO at their next meeting at the end of July. All right, thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to agenda item number 5, which is on the Twin Cities Rail Trail Phase 2 status. And Brian, I guess I will need control of the screen again.
It's all yours, Brad. I think you can just share your screen.
All right. I want to do all right. Oh, wrong one. Where did I put this? Did I put the I didn't pull it up. Let me see what I did with it. I must have closed it. Give me 1 second while I reopen it, and then we'll. Oh, that's not it. No. That's not it. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay. What screen are you seeing right now, Brian?
Looks like the slideshow from the DOT presentation.
All right, so it's a public informational meeting?
Yep.
Great. All right. What I'm going to show you is from a public informational meeting that Mass DOT had back on April 13th in Fitchburg regarding Twin City Rail Trail and what's being called Phase 2 of the project. These first few slides are just information on procedures and how they set up the meeting, and then an agenda as to who was involved and who was giving the presentation, how they notified people of the informational meeting. This agenda for the meeting includes they'll go over a project background, initiation, update, environmental permitting, construction, and then questions and answers. And we'll show you how you could also send comments to Mass DOT on this. So they started with the project background. Basically, this is the project area for phase 2 of this project. And what you see highlighted in blue is the initial concept designs for connecting downtown Fitchburg, down near the intermodal on 150 Main Street or 100 Main Street, to Railroad Street off of Route 12 in Fitchburg. Basically from Hayden Passway to the Railroad Street location. This is a concept plan of the different phases of the Twin City Rail Trail. What you see highlighted in blue is known as Phase 1, and this was completed in the last few years. There's a little green section here in the middle, which is some reconstruction that's undergoing on Route 12 in Leominster. Phase 2 is this section highlighted in red, and that's what we'll be discussing with the rest of this presentation. There's a city project scheduled for Railroad Street, and shown in yellow. And then what will be phase 3 will be a future project to connect up the rail trail into downtown Leominster. So those are the different phases of this entire project. In terms of cost, it's estimated to be at $25 million for phase 2. That does not include any right-of-way acquisition. It's being paid with federal and state funds from the U.S. Department of Transportation. Luckily, it is not a target eligible, or it's not a target project for our region because it far exceeds what we have available in any program year or any TIP year for target funds. So the state is picking up the cost out of statewide funds for the construction of this project. This is a brief background of how they got to the point they're at now. Back in 2015, they had initial meetings, listening meetings in Fitchburg and Leominster on the rail trail. The project was separated in 2018 into a phase 1 and phase 2. Back in 2019, they had a 25% design public hearing for phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 construction began in 2020, and as I mentioned, it's completed in 2022. And just recently, in 2022, they received approval for a new trail alignment in Fitchburg, the phase 2 project, the 25% design. Why was the project initiated? Good question. It was to provide connectivity from obviously Fitchburg and Leominster and the phase 1 trail to MART intermodal station in Fitchburg and downtown Leominster. Basically, without this connections, you're kind of dumped off in sections, incomplete sections on this trail, and it doesn't make the connectivity issues, or it doesn't make the connection they wanted to make, which is also to serve not only as a recreational trail, but it also can be a commuter trail for people traveling to and from Fitchburg and Leominster. What do they want to accomplish? Just for your knowledge, this picture here that you see is the Twin City Rail Trail Bridge over Route 2. It was a former railroad bridge that was taken down and repurposed and reconstructed and serves as the crossing of Route 2 in Leominster. So these are some more pictures of the trail. The phase 1 trailhead at 4th Street, where the beginning is. The major obstacle of crossing the MBTA Railroad and the North Nashua River, and the connection they want to make to the MART intermodal station. These are the major points of phase 2. They also tried to minimize impacts to the butters. There's Unitil has a property near the proposed trail. There's a truck company. They wanted to make sure they didn't impact their truck movements. And then you had a communications shed for the MBTA, which is important for maintaining a commuter rail progress and movement throughout the area. This is the one ending in Fitchburg at the existing intermodal center. They were looking at impacting approximately 2 parking lot areas in the intermodal, a total of 24 different parking spaces. 16 are revenue spaces and 8 were non-revenue spaces. They're shown here highlighted in the yellow. And they've been working with MART to reconfigure the parking lot and get this design in place. Since the 25% time, what has changed? What you see up Up top is the initial alignment talked about in 2019. It comes from Hayden Passway, crosses over the MBTA Railroad, and then makes its way down to Railroad Street near the intermodal area. The problem with the initial alignment, this red square here is the track signals that are shown up in this little picture to the right. And those control train speeds and train movement on the rail. So this particular bridge, where it was originally located, blocked those signals, and therefore it was important that it had to be moved. It couldn't be allowed to happen by blocking those signals, because you see trains coming from the intermodal heading eastbound would be blocked in seeing those signals by the bridge where it was initially proposed to go. So they came up with a realignment, which would take the crossing of the railroad behind and beyond the traffic signals or railroad signals, so that they wouldn't be impacted in any way. So the design, how it's progressed. This is a concept diagram, a concept illustration of the proposed bridge over the railroad. Again, the current alignment is you see here, Hayden Passway and Fitchburg coming down on a slow incline up to a bridge, and then over and around to the Railroad Street in Fitchburg. So the highlighted areas in pink are at-grade crossings on the at-grade trail systems. There's an elevated retaining wall type sections of the trail, making this loop over near Railroad Street and just climbing up from the intermodal area. The blue is the elevated bridge over the tracks. And of course, the railroad signal remains at where it is in the red square here. These are concept drawings, what they're looking at doing. You can see the near Railroad Street, the initial elevated retaining walls of the trail. This is looking at it from the opposite direction. The picture on the left is taken from somewhere over here, looking up to the start of the loop and then the crossover of the bridge. This is the bridge concept that they're looking at doing. It's an open top bridge coming around. They'll be doing wire fencing on the side of the bridge for safety reasons. We want to talk, I think we want to, as a planning commission, we want to provide some input to the MassDOT on this, on what we think about this bridge. I think they need to maybe consider some screening on the top of the bridge, because I just anticipate certain individuals who might take the opportunity to try and see if they could lob something over onto the railroad tracks, but that's just me and my cynicism. Excuse me, some more concepts of the railroad bridge running parallel to the track. This is the rendering of the entire system. Here you see the red box for the traffic signals. Here is downtown Fitchburg area near the Railroad Street, and Hayden Passway Intermodal are up at the top of the picture under the word rendering. That's the intermodal center area. Another view of that rendering from the opposite direction. Down below you see this green roofed one, that's the intermodal center, and the traffic signals, railroad signals that are indicated by the red box there. I will come back to this. They put together a video of the trail, riding the trail. Actually, let me see, I think I'll run it right now. Brian, can you see this large picture of the rendering?
We can see the rendering, yes.
Okay, I'm going to start it and see if I can make sure it moves. Give it a second. Here we go. I'm actually going to pause this for 1 second. I'm going to just pause it for a second and slow it down. I think it moves just a little too fast. Let me find out where that was. Oh, over here. I'm just going to slow it down to half speed because it moves kind of fast to begin with. So again, this is starting at the intermodal center. You can see it over on the right-hand side.
Hey, Brad, you might still be on the original DOT presentation. You might have to switch applications.
Okay. All right, let me just pause it then. All right. All right, I just stopped sharing and now let me share again. Window. All right, here we go. Here's the media player. All right, as I said, I did slow this down a bit. So once we get rolling, you'll see on the right is the intermodal center, and this starts in their parking lot area, heading up this slow incline towards the bridge that will cross over the railroad. And they've added spots for benches and people to sit and watch and take breaks. Here's the start of the incline coming up to the bridge and parallel to the railroad tracks. That's a fairly wide trail with wooden fencing on the sides. We'll be coming up to the curve to come to the bridge, where it curves to the right, and the curve helps slow individuals down traveling on the bridge and on the trail. Is where the white structure you see on the right, that's the traffic signal bridge communication system. This is the bridge coming up over the rail lines. And then back down an incline and around a loop to get back to street level at the Fitchburg City side. And again, this gets back down to street level and the crossing at the street level, connecting back up with the trains, the rest of the rail trail. I'm going to find my way out of here. And go back to the presentation I had. So that's the little video they put together. The rest of this talks about how individual property owners will be impacted and what will be done. They're obviously going to be discussing with them the right-of-way department and the city of Fitchburg. Pedestrian impacts. The trail again is 14 to 16 feet wide, wooden fencing, protective fencing put in place, a bike rack at the intermodal and a bike shelter. At the Railroad Street trailhead, there'll be new crosswalks for pedestrians, new landscaping, and connection up to the existing phase one. This is just a listing of the environmental permitting process they have to go through. You can see there's a lot of notifications and permits that have to be run through and approved. And that's part of the process in getting this whole thing up and running. The construction approach. They're going to try and obviously minimal roadway impacts. Off-road is most of the project. There'll be night work conducted for the bridge over the railroad tracks. And finally, the next steps. They hope to have the 75% design submission in early summer of this year, get to 100% in late fall, have the right-of-way all secured by early 2024, advertise in summer 2024, and begin construction in 2025, 2027 is the anticipated construction timeframe. How to keep people informed. There's different ways that they intend to provide information. They can also, you see here the chief engineer who can accept comments regarding the proposal and the design. The email where you can get back and get to Mass DOT. Mass DOT has their website, which lists the upcoming events to check there. And you can also look at the Twin Cities Rail Trail website. They'll have additional information up as this program moves forward. So again, if you have, this is all just on for the informational meeting, getting questions, but again, this is the final, this was the presentation made back on April 13th to the general public. So with that, if there's any questions on this presentation, on this phase 2 information? Nope. Seeing none, I will stop sharing and we'll move on. The next item on our agenda is item 6, contract status report. I have nothing for FTA or the RTA. George, do you have something? Would you like to talk about?
Yes, can you put that Townsend commuter shuttle flyer?
Will do. Can you see that now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the town really, the town of Townsend marked a newest member community has requested a new commuter shuttle service between downtown Townsend and Fitchburg Intermodal Center to provide access to the MBTA commuter rail station to its residents. The new shuttle service will be ferry free starting Wednesday, July 5th. The service will connect two trains in the morning going to Boston and 2 trains coming from Boston in afternoon weekdays. And also they have a weekend service, one train meeting, 1 train in the morning inbound and 1 outbound, and 1 afternoon inbound and 1 outbound. Hopefully this will be a great opportunity for the resident of Townsend to use the service going to Boston to work and to pleasure. That's what I have.
Any questions for George? Seeing none, I'll move on to MassDOT 3C. I have a couple of items before you. The first is the full planning commission at their meeting last week on June 8th approved the hiring of Tyler Godin as a full-time transportation principal planner with the MRPC. Tyler is also currently employed by the MRPC in the comprehensive planning department, but he'll be transferring over to our side beginning July 1st. So we'll have a new transportation planner as part of our JTC and is in the department at the MRPC. Second is a announcement from Federal Highway Administration regarding their local aid support. This one announces a discretionary grants dashboard that they've developed that provides communities with an overview of discretionary grant opportunities that can help meet their transportation infrastructure needs. It's designed with all communities in mind. The dashboard identifies grant programs and with which match rural and tribal set-asides, as well as waivers available for different things. The dashboard also includes federal grant programs outside of DOT that may be of particular interest to rural communities. So the dashboard will be updated weekly. There's a lot more information on this handout related to different funding and opportunities and webinars that are upcoming. But if you're interested in the dashboard, this is also on our website at mrpc.org. Also, we sent out with the mailing a meeting notice, a list of MJTC appointments. As I mentioned last month or the month before, we were sending out appointment forms for individuals and communities for appointment of representatives from the Board of Selectmen or the Planning Board. This was the one we sent out with the mailing. I updated that actually this morning with a couple more new ones. So in total right now we have about 14 individuals that have or communities that have been responded and told us of their appointees. So if your community is not highlighted in yellow, the yellow are the new appointment forms we got back. So if you don't see your community up here highlighted and responding, double check with them, get in touch with us. We can also send back out the forms in case they need be. But I just want to remind people we want to try and get these in as soon as we can for people to begin serving technically with the July 1st meeting. Next is a special meeting notice that was sent out, and I just resent it again today just to be on the safe side. The MPO meeting, which is regularly scheduled for next Wednesday, June 21st, is being moved to Wednesday, June 28th at the same time, 1 p.m. This move gives us an extra week to put the draft RTP together and get it posted to our website. So I just want to make everybody aware that the meeting is being moved back 1 week to June 28th. And we'll also at that meeting probably be looking to get the MPO to move the July meeting back a week also from July 19th to July 26th. That way we can complete the full 21-day comment period before the July MPO meeting. So just be aware of that. If anyone you know is going to the MPO meeting, it's being moved to 28th. We've sent out notices, and again, it's posted on our website for people to let them know. No, not that one. The last thing I have, with the rush these last few weeks of getting the RTP information put together, I neglected to get out to everybody a notice that typically we start the process for election of officers for the MJTC. We typically have a nominating committee put together. They should have been put together at the last month's meeting, met before this one, and announced a slate at this June meeting for the election to take place in July. Again, it was my mistake that I forgot to put that together and make notice to people. What I'd like to do is maybe select the nominating committee today, get them to put a slate together for us for the July meeting, and then have the election right afterwards at the same July meeting. Nominating committee, I need at least 3 people to be on it. Simply give us a slate for chair, vice chair, and secretary. Typically, we'll meet, nominating committee will meet half an hour before the next MJTC meeting to talk about possible candidates. We as a staff can track down our current officers and see if they're interested in returning. But I'd like to know if anyone would like to volunteer to be on the nominating committee for next month. It's really light work. It just needs 3 people to give us some names, and we'll assist as much as we can in putting together that slate for people. So if anyone is interested, no hands raised. So do I get to select people? No. Okay. George, would you like to be on this nominating committee? It's real light lifting, you know that. No?
Yes, I don't know if I will be here, but okay.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else would like to volunteer?
Brad, it's Brian from Winchendon. I'll join it.
Okay. I'm sorry, Brian from,
Winchendon?
yep, I'm looking to find your name on my thing. Oh, there you are. Okay. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Just one more? Beth, could you spare half an hour, 15 minutes before the next meeting to sit in? Is that possible?
I'm sorry. Is someone talking to me?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't.
Oh,
Would you like to serve on a nominating committee? We'll meet before the next meeting for half an hour at the most, just to put together a slate.
okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have our nominating committee. And I'll send out notice to you people. We'll make everything as easy as possible. And then July, we'll announce the slate and have the election, if everyone's okay with that.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 7, administrative matters. Next MJTC meeting is, of course, Wednesday, July 12th at 2:30 p.m. I have no other administrative matters. Any other questions from anyone? If not, we can move to adjournment.
Okay.
Seeing none? Seeing none? All right, thanks a lot. We are
Thank you.
adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.